Alright, it's officially the new year. Happy 2023, everybody. I wish I could say that I felt like this was going to be my year, but after being duped by the train wreck that was 2020, I'm done making those kind of blanket statements. That being said, I'm going to try and remain cautiously optimistic rather than just running around screaming, "The sky is falling" at the top of my lungs. Also, before we get too far into the video, I want to give a huge shout out to Yellowflash and Razorfist for helping to push me past the 100 subscriber milestone. Go check these guys' channels out, I'll pin them in the description down below. A huge thank you to all of my current and future subscribers as well. I'm incredibly thrilled and humbled by the response to my most recent video, and I'd love to try and carry that momentum into the new year. So, in my last video, I mainly focused on the drama surrounding Henry Cavill and his departure from the roles of both Superman and The Witcher, with the role of Geralt being deeply steeped within the fantasy genre. These roles were not without their own controversies, albeit for very different reasons. The Witcher was generally well received at first, but a subpar second season, as well as a plethora of rumors from behind the scenes on set, have seemed to set the future of this franchise into a full-blown downward spiral. Despite a strong performance by Cavill as the Man of Steel, this current iteration of the DC Universe is a complete and total mess, embroiled by lawsuits, cancellations, firings, and fan outrage. It's safe to say that 2022 was one of the worst years for the fantasy or superhero genres that I can ever recall. So, without further ado, let's recap some of the worst, most cringe-worthy shows and movies of 2022, also known as the year that ruined fantasy.
Fuck.
Since I already covered The Witcher pretty extensively, we'll just kind of go over the basics of how this show 180'd from having so much potential to now being something that probably won't crack the Nielsen's top 10 ratings when Season 3 finally drops. Casting a fan like Henry Cavill in the role of Geralt of Rivia seemed like a smart move to most people. I had a few doubts upon seeing the initial production photos, but 10 minutes into the Season 1 pilot and I was convinced that this could be something really special. Sadly, that level of enthusiasm just would not last. The Polish novels that the show claimed to be based on were not intended to be a literal melting pot of ethnicities, gender ideologies, and modern politics. Originally being published as a short story in a Polish magazine, The Witcher quickly grew into a book series heavily based on Polish folklore and Arthurian legends. What the Netflix show managed to give us was a modernized version of something that loosely resembles the games and stories that so many of us have played and love. In the specific universe of elves, dwarves, sorcerers, and monster slayers, there were heavily established characters and lore to pull from if one would choose to do so. Instead, the showrunner Lauren Hisrich decided to let the writer's room run wild, race swapping and diversifying the cast for diversity's sake alone, which, to be honest, isn't the thing that bothered people the most, or ruined the show entirely. But like most established fantasy stories that contain within them specific ethnic groups and subcultures, race swapping is usually the canary in the coal mine that the showrunners are about to make significantly larger changes. To be fair, I liked the actresses that played Fringilla, Yennefer, and Triss, but the race swapping of all three of these important female characters was too obvious to ignore. Moving on from the uber-sensitive topic of race, the more egregious offenses came in the second season. Intentionally choosing to sideline Geralt to instead focus on the strong, empowered women and killing off both his horse Roach and crucial supporting character Eskel, a character the show portrayed horribly and then ingloriously ended in his debut episode, are some of the reasons fans began to nope out from this Netflix series. We all know how the rest of the story goes. Cavill left the show, the showrunners begged people to stick around for Season 3, and not long ago a transcript leaked of one of the writers smearing Cavill as a toxic man-baby. Fans started a petition to bring Cavill back, but despite the petition gaining a massive amount of signatures, he's moved on to his recently announced Warhammer series on Amazon. This brings us to last week's premiere of the Witcher spin-off that nobody asked for or wanted, Blood Origins. I'm not going to spend too much time on this show. Suffice it to say, it's officially the worst-rated Netflix series ever on Rotten Tomatoes. The show ticks all the important checkboxes. Diversity? Check. Strong, independent women? Check. Beating down toxic masculinity? Check. What the show is lacking, as it turns out, is a decent script, fans that give a damn, and any faithfulness to the established Witcher lore. It's almost like they wanted their show to be the very embodiment of get woke, go broke. Only Netflix isn't going broke anytime soon, but they certainly have been woke for a long time. Speaking of woke, I'd be ashamed of myself if I didn't drag Willow through the mud yet again. They have old white people getting killed off to show that the situation is serious, lesbian knights and princesses doing all the heavy lifting, and an ethnically ambiguous prince telling his betrothed that, I shit you not, she's a, quote, very pretty person. Because, it's 2022 and the term woman is just so damn ambiguous. Add into that they've made the only slightly masculine protagonist into a total slimeball, and Willow himself is nothing but a creepy charlatan who tried to kidnap Allura as a toddler in one of the most awkward scenes ever, only to then leave Tyr's Lean and to vow never to return. Allura, who he vowed to look after, has grown up into an idiot. She's the stereotypical dumb white girl and kind of a hussy at that. Oh, and the princess's brother that they have to go and rescue is another weak beta male. Yawn. I stopped watching during the opening scene of episode 5, where they had yet another female cover of a modern rock song playing in the background. We get it. Girl power. I mean, I love female metal singers, but all this is a little too on the nose. And I'd be remiss if I failed to mention that instead of giving Val Kilmer's absent character a glorious, heroic death, they instead have relegated him to the role of an absent father. This show will not get a second season. One show that remains a question mark is Amazon's billion-dollar disaster, The Rings of Power. Reviewing this show is something of a quagmire. While the Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb scores speak for themselves, there was a large discrepancy among the viewers about what redeeming qualities the show may have had. Some people said at least the music was good. Others that the show is boring, but the scenery and effects are breathtaking. Personally, I disagreed with both of these assertions. The acting was flat, the characters unlikable, and the lore had little to nothing to do with the show's namesake, The Lord of the Rings. Amazon didn't actually acquire the rights that one would need to make a faithful Second Age fantasy series, so instead what we got was poorly written fan fiction with an ass ton of money thrown at it. Instead of making a good show and being understanding that fans wanted something more heavily rooted in Tolkien's mythology, the cast and crew attacked the fans as racist bigots that were living in the past and needed to just do better. Once again, we see another multinational billion-dollar corporation rallying its crew members as well as the shills in the mainstream media to lambaste the fans for the perceived crime of simply not liking the shit that Amazon is shoveling out. There's much speculation about a possible, reboot for Season 2 of Rings of Power. One show that isn't getting a reboot, but rather is charging headfirst into continuing its wretched storyline is the Paramount Plus series Halo. This show is almost not worth mentioning, and I know it's technically a sci-fi, but just indulge me long enough to jump genres for a second. As someone who grew up when the Halo games were first introduced into the whole gaming space, the idea of a Halo show or movie has always given me pause. I mean, how could any person alive be as perfect in the role of John 117, such as Steve Downs, the voice actor of Master Chief, was in the entire game franchise? I mean, Halo has left a legacy of being one of the most impactful and long-lasting FPS titles in all of gaming. The show has not had the same effect. They've made Master Chief sensitive, impulsive, emotional, and erratic, all things that go against his very nature. Not only do they not stick with the long-time practice of never showing Master Chief's face, but they go as far as stripping him butt-ass naked and even having a sex scene between him and a human woman who is working with the enemy, the Alien Covenant. The only people that seem to enjoy this silver timeline, as they call it, are those that don't actually have any history with the games themselves. So let's wind down with some more noteworthy mentions. From the DC side of things, the Batwoman show, which was possibly the biggest piece of flaming garbage ever filmed, has been cancelled before it's even had its 4th season, and it was only averaging about 400,000 viewers per episode. The Batwoman movie, with supporting roles by Michael Keaton and Brendan Fraser, has been shelved and is never to be seen by any audience ever. Now we've seen James Gunn pull the plug on Cavill's Superman, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, The Rock's Black Adam sequel, and so on. So this might be the right choice for DC long term, I'm not so sure, but we'll see. But just looking at 2022, it's apparent that they had a very bad year. Marvel didn't escape 2022 unscathed either. With crazy feminist girl power now hitting its peak, we saw several box office bombs such as Thor, Love and Thunder, and Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, both movies that sidelined their male protagonists for the sake of the female counterparts just getting more face time. And let's not forget about She-Hulk, the worst, whiniest, laziest attempt at a comedy that spent the entire series proclaiming woman good, man bad. Yeah, that went over swimmingly. I mean, we've had Wizards of the Coast stumble all over themselves to apologize for space monkey slaves and apparently orcs for being black people, I guess. Let's not forget about the death of the rebooted G4 cable network that, according to recent data, nobody was watching. We've seen the Saints Row Zoomer Edition reboot that tried to modernize the irreverent game series only to fail miserably at this ill-conceived cash grab. mean, I even recall CD Projekt Red, the development team behind the Witcher games, pushing the ideology of ESG, and if you don't know what that is, just think evil globalist overlords, as well as promising that the next Witcher game will appeal to a, quote, modern audience. Yeah, no thanks. All I can hope looking forward is that the Warhammer 40k is a smash hit, because the fantasy genre desperately needs reviving. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit the subscribe button, it really helps me out. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.